We are joined by Gary-ish.
No,
Yeah, Gary.
You still can't pronounce it.
Gary, say your
it's
last
fine.
name
You
for
just
us.
say Gary. Thank you.
Gary, that many of you know from the Google Webmaster Trends team and one of the key co-organizers of last night's Google Dance. Thank you very much again. It was really good.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can do another one. Hopefully.
Thought it was great. So we've got some questions that are already coming in, but let me start, Paul. Can you, two things. Just wanted to clarify in the shard situation, these are parts of the overall index in various places.
So the sharding thing is for the size of the index. We basically build very big machines, and we pick the shard size so that they fill these very big machines. And the index is the sum of all the shards together.
Okay. And then, one of the big questions in everybody's mind is, how does RankBrain fit into all this sort of thing? I see you grimace already, but you've talked about the different ranking signals and things you're looking at.
Right. So RankBrain gets to see some subset of the signals, and it's a machine learned system, or a deep learning system, that has its own ideas about how you combine signals and understand documents. So I can't go into too much detail about how RankBrain works, and honestly, we spent a long time trying to understand how it works, and I think we understand how it works, and we still don't understand what it's doing exactly. But
which is reassuring for everybody who was thinking, do I need to figure out how to figure out what it's doing? So Google doesn't even know what it's doing, so you don't have to worry.
Right. What I will say is it uses a lot of the stuff that we've published about deep learning. There's some work on that goes by either word2vec or word embeddings. That is one layer of what RankBrain is doing. I think I can say that safely. It actually plugs into one of the boxes. It plugs into the sort of the late post retrieval box that I showed before.
Or let me put it another way. One thing that I keep trying to get clear in my head. So, as a machine learning system, I can understand how it could look at pages on their own. Say we gave it a million pages, and it's just looking at pages themselves. Right. It actually seems fairly straightforward that it could start figuring out patterns of words and understanding relationships between words and such like that. What I always sort of struggle with is, the idea of, well, how would it know the authority of a page, or how would it know whether a page is of good quality or whatever? And my impression has been that it is acting upon the signals. You talked about we try to figure out signals, and we try to figure out ways you measure this stuff, and we figure out how to combine these things together.
This is all a function of the training data that it gets. And so it sees not just web pages, but it sees queries, and it sees other signals. So it can judge based on stuff like that. I'm not sure I can say that much more that would be useful.
Yeah, no, that's actually helpful. One question here, can you discuss the conversion goals that Google uses when they test ranking algorithm refinements? Are there consistent goals that all updates are measured against?
Conversion goals. We used to have a metric which was next page rate. And we figured the more users who went on to the second page of results, the worse it was. Well, it turns out you can totally game this metric.
The metric was next page rate?
Next page rate. How often users hit next page?
Oh, next page. Okay.
Yes. How often users hit next page and go on to page 2 of Google results?
I thought it was like PageRank 2.0.
No, it's next page rate.
Right.
And it turns out you can just totally game this metric by introducing white space. And the more the user has to scroll down to get to the next page, the less likely they are to do that.
You had mentioned that the first thing that you do is determine if a query contains an entity now.
That's one of the early stage things we do.
Is that something you would have done 5 years ago?
That's something that came in when we started doing all the knowledge graph and knowledge panels.
Yeah.
So it's key to those processes. It's used in a lot of ways, but that was certainly not something we were doing before we launched the knowledge graph. And I'm trying to remember where that was. That was 2011, 2012?
I think 2011.
Okay.
I was going to make a Geddon joke, but I won't. That was knowledge graph Geddon. Okay, I did it anyway. So when, please clap. No. When you are, if someone's logged into Google, to any Google app, I assume they're either using Google Now or maybe they're using Google Chrome or so on. Do you differentiate by the information you gather So I guess I'm wondering, I guess the question is like, if you're in Google Now versus Google Chrome, can that have an impact on what you're seeing based on?
I would phrase it as there's so I don't think of it as a Google Now app. There's a Google Search app, and there's Chrome, and there's and on iOS they're different products, and on Android I guess they're much closer to being the same
Right.
product. It's one login at least, I think, on Chrome. Is that right, Gary? I think. Anyway, it's really a question of if you're logged in or not. We try to provide a consistent logged in experience for a user around, their interests and the things that we're showing them in Google Now cards.
I think it's also related to about browsing history, because browsing history is part of the things you need to do refinement. If we're signed in, our browsing history comes with us. It's not device specific.
Definitely,
it's
definitely.
account
And we do,
specific.
and provided you have not turned off personalization, we do search personalization, and we talk. I mean, we show you the last. You last visited this page on this date, so right. So, that's a good sign. If you're seeing those, it's a good sign that we're doing search-based
I always like when it goes, you visit this page many times. Perhaps you might bookmark it. No, it doesn't say that.
Yeah. The problem is that you're more likely to have your search follow you across devices than your bookmarks.
Yeah, no, it's somehow though it does make me feel bad. Like you visited this many times. Like
So it's supposed to make you feel good.
I've done something wrong. Like maybe you've gone to.
See, this is one of those things that's really interesting for me because that was definitely put in there to make you feel good, to make me feel like we're helping you.
I'm weird. I'm sure it's just me.
Well, how do people feel about that? Hands? Does it make you feel good? Does it make
You feel good
bad?
when it says you visited a page many times?
Do you care?
Does it make you feel bad? Do you like seeing it? It's just late in the day and I can't even be bothered to put my hands up. It's nothing you could ask me that would make me put a hand up. Okay. What? Depends on the query. It does. There are times when I find it reassuring. Like, so for example, I'm always searching for SMX West because it's easier than typing it in, right? So I'll be there many times. But sometimes I do a query periodically, and personally, it is reassuring to me when I note I have been to something before. That's good.
That's the goal.
Does Google deliver different results for the same query at different times per day? We seem to observe local maps for some search terms, but only during business hours. Is that a thing?
I'm not sure, actually. In maps, for example, like in the knowledge panel, if we display something maps related or local related, then we will show the closing hours, for example, or if it's closed or not.
Yeah. Opening hours and closing hours would be, but I don't think I can't say for sure.
Right.
But I don't think we try to do that with ranking. I do think we do try to show that feature when we know if it's useful.
Okay.
I mean, it may very well happen that the user still wants to go to the place even if it's closing.
Yeah.
Just a few days ago, a subway was closing next to me in 10 minutes, and I still wanted to go there because I was hungry.
I thought I'm sorry that you were that way.
Yeah, I know. I have a tough life.
I thought the Texas farm fertilizer example was awesome. Like, that you're like, oh yeah, why would you want to show a map there? And the question here is, well, how did you figure out that was something that was going wrong? Do you get like a winners losers report by queries? And
so I guess all right. I showed what the raters see from an experiment. What we get.
Which is now going viral on Twitter.
Oh, good. What we get, that's why I took all my screenshots from something we already published.
Yeah.
What we get is, for each experiment, a summary of the experiment, how it does on a bunch of different metrics. And there are different ones we look at for different types of experiments. And then we can drill down into every individual query, and we can look at the queries that did well on the metrics and did poorly on the metrics. And so we will see, oh, this did, so honestly, that Texas farm fertilizer was one of the wins in an experiment. We class them as wins or losses. It's like, look, we added the map, and the raters said it was good. Mm-hmm. And I'm there to tell the team, actually, we think that's terrible, but it's not your fault. The raters are great by and large, but And we trust their intuitions a lot, and they do a phenomenal job. So I don't want to say, but occasionally they get enthusiastic about, sort of, it's like, this is a useful piece of information about where this company is. Maybe, but that's not really what we expect the user is searching for.
Okay. Let me get us out of the way so people will stop asking me. Can we do the obligatory, what's going on with Panda and Penguin?
Fortunately, I don't know anything. I know where they fit in the chart of the boxes. Where we do it. It's in the retrieval and scoring box.
If only we had somebody else on this stage that was prepared for such a question in case it came up.
Yeah. So I
soon
honestly gave up on Penguin, like giving a date or a time frame when it will be launched. I know for sure that we are, or the engineers are working on it. They are thinking about it, how we can launch it, but I honestly don't know a date. And I don't want to say a date anymore because I was wrong already 3 times, I think, 4 times. And it's bad for business.
So I will just say, I talked directly about this in my slides, in that some of these launches have a very long iteration cycle of experiment and analyze and go back and generate. And then there's a very long process often between the approval and the launch.
That was related to that too. One person, I won't name him, Barry, asked about if Penguin was one of these like 2-year long. You talked once about something that took 2 years to.
That was not Penguin. That one was actually half a ranking and half a features launch. It was our first half-assed attempt at, or actually it was our second one, but the first one that we really launched, at spelling corrections that took over the whole page. The showing results for instead of did you mean.
Oh, right, okay.
That required rewriting a lot of systems.
Another question here, is it true that you're using RankBrain to machine learn the best ways to mess with the minds of SEOs and roll out Panda and Penguin updates?
That's actually the only reason we developed it.
Stealth project.
See, I thought it was to mess with the minds of the other ranking engineers.
No, that wasn't a question, obviously. But you mentioned the expertise of a given author, post, rel author, and Google authorship.
Yes.
How are you identifying and tracking the author authority for topics?
There, I'm not going to go into any detail. I think what I will say is the raters are expected to do that manually for a page that they're seeing. They are actually, so what we measure is, are we able to do a good job of getting things that the raters think are authorities?
So the raters might say, I think this looked like it was authored by somebody that was good, and you're kind of going back and thinking, yeah, and the way we kind of determine if an author is good seems to be matching that.
Yes.
And maybe related, maybe you can answer or not, but you referred to author authority. Does that mean that the authority is used by Google as a direct or indirect ranking factor, which it sounds like it is?
I wouldn't say yes, I wouldn't say no. It's much more complicated than a simple answer. And I can't, I just don't think I could give a concrete answer there.
And lastly, when explicit authorship ended, Google did say we're still doing authorship, so keep doing things like having bylines and common stuff like,
Yeah.
But this is like, this person's really just wondering, should they even bother with things like rel author?
You got an answer there?
I know that there's at least one team that is still looking into using the rel author tag, and just for the sake of the future developments, I guess. If I were an SEO, I would still leave it there because it really doesn't hurt if you have it there. But if you are doing new pages, then probably it's not worth it including. We might use it for something in the future. But yeah.
Okay.
The
If you got a CMS, if you got a CMS that can do it. Well, you know what? Ask the SEOs of the next session, see what they say too. How do you avoid quality raters from having a brand familiarity bias? Sometimes expertise is much stronger on specialized sites.
Yeah, that's a good question. We do ask them to do research, but I do think that they often have a bias. There are metrics we have that try to counter that bias. That's not directly in our quality signals. I haven't begun to go through all the metrics we actually look at, and I don't think quality is necessarily the one that gets at the that gets at that, unfortunately. That said, there are a lot of very small sites that I see that get very strong quality ratings because the raters do a thorough job. They seem to be pretty good at figuring this out.
Do you want to comment on the question that will never die, click-through rate? In the past, I think the last I recall official from Google is we use click-through rate off our search results to reassure that what we're doing is right. We don't use click-through rate as a ranking factor in and of itself.
What I would say is I've talked explicitly about us using click-through rate for experiments, and that's something we've been pretty open about, I think, over the years. And we use it for personalization. It's a challenging thing to use in any circumstance, and people try all sorts of crazy things. They don't necessarily work.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul even mentioned in his presentation that even when you do experiments and you have like a controlled group, even then it's hard to interpret the engagement.
We have there are so many experiments that we've done that have very misleading live metrics that you really need to dig into them.
Would you have a good example or any?
Well, so the one with the snippets that I was talking about before, or just the next page rate turning out to be a much worse signal.
I was working on hreflang, for example, and we had lots of weird click signals from those live experiments because users were just confused about how we introduced or how we swapped results.
All right, so I will actually give you, for a long time, before I got to Google and until maybe 2005, 2006, we had a long-running experiment which swapped results 2 and 4.
I knew it.
It only did it for, I don't remember, 0.2% of users, and it was random whether you got into the sample that did this or whatever. What do you think the effect of that experiment is? If you're in the sample that saw 2 and 4 swapped.
I guess slightly more people would scroll down and click on 3.
Actually, more people click on 1.
Really?
They see 1. They don't know whether they like it or not. They look at 2, which is really much worse than 2 was. They give up because 4, the result that should have been at 4 and was actually at 2, was so bad they click at 1.
So the bird in the hand experiment. I'm just going to go with 1 because I don't know what else is on the bottom of this page. If that's number 2.
If that's number 2.
It's the best I'm going to get.
Yeah. And so that was basically the most pronounced of it. We did see lower clicks on 2. We saw slightly increased clicks on 4. But the most noticeable effect was the effect on.
That's fascinating.
Right. I mean, just here's another bias that's just crazy on this. Position 10 gets way more clicks than positions 8 and 9 put together. Why? Because it's the last one you see right before you have to hit the next page, and no one wants to hit next page.
I think there'll be a whole new position 10
Yeah.
SEO.
Go try
strategy.
it. That will be so much fun to try.
I couldn't get you in the top 3, but I got you that coveted 10 spot.
The bad news is it's actually worse than position 7.
Oh, is it? Yeah, okay. We're almost out of time. Did you have any questions you want to ask the audience at all? You can think
I'm
about it.
I'm trying to think. I talked to a lot of people last night. I talked to a lot of people while I was walking around before. So I don't know.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're good.
I've got a lot of questions, and I wish I could get through them all, and I obviously can't. I will say that I think we have a half hour. Well, I know exactly. We do have a half-hour break, so I think Paul will probably take questions if you don't mind.
happy to hang out
Just
for a
let
little
him
while.
get off to the side of the stage there, because if 40 people come onto this stage, it will collapse, and that would be a bad thing. And I will do one last question. Somebody wanted to know. They wanted to know what you were reading right now.
What am I reading right now? Actually, I just started. So I read on. I read I read a lot of journalism and very few books on paper or on Kindle. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I drive between San Francisco and Mountain View every day. And just finished an audiobook which I loved, which was Garth Risk-Hallberg's City on Fire about New York in the 70s. And I grew up in New York in the 70s. And it was just 900 pages, and I was disappointed when it ended. I'm reading right now Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, about the rise of a populist demagogue in the 1930s.
Oh, I think there's a movie happening now.
Yeah.
It's being filmed as we watch.
As we
but
watch,
you
a
know.
reality show, I believe. So anyway, so
Right.
that's quite good too.
Well, we'll see if you'll have a Paul Haahr effect and spike interest in those books. Okay.